up, everybody? This is your boy, Teran Rodriguez, bringing you another edition of Set Point. And as always, you have ourselves a jam-packed show as you have a lot of volleyball to discuss, such as Pepperdine takes down number 1 UCLA. Were they able to do so once on the men's side, or did they do so twice? Also, how about the NEC? The Northeast Conference went crazy as UMES took down LIU. And how about Fairleigh Dickinson taking down Damon not once but twice? Also, Manhattan took down St. Francis. What? And Hawaii remains unbeaten in Big West Conference play. Can any Big West Conference team stop the boat? My answer, probably not. Also, how about Stanford and beach volleyball going undefeated in Best of the West? Also, the MLB is nearing its end in terms of the regular season, as which 4 teams will be in the playoffs. Also, which 4 teams made the League One volleyball playoffs? And did Nebraska make it, or just the end of a living legend? Canyon Volleyball, Set to Net, Drama, Tradition Volleyball action here on Set Point. This is Teran Rodriguez bringing you another edition of Set Point here on iSports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. And welcome one, welcome all to another edition of Set Point. Thank you all for joining me on this beautiful Monday afternoon, Monday evening, Monday wherever you are listening from. Either way, you've made your way into episode 345 of Set Point. Without any further delay, let's begin. But first and foremost, Set Point would not be where it's at without IE Sports Radio providing the platform to go live on X and on YouTube. Please do follow IE Sports Radio on X as well as subscribe to them on YouTube. We would greatly appreciate it. We're trying to reach 500 subscribers before we could reach 1,000 and then so on and so forth. But we've got to reach 500 for that first milestone. With your help, we could definitely make it happen. So please do subscribe to IE Sports Radio on YouTube. We would definitely appreciate it. Also, make sure to check out our website, iesportsradio.com, for all of your latest news regarding us and possibly our blog coming back. And check out all of our shows as well, because we have shows ranging from volleyball, obviously, to football, to basketball, to hockey. The list goes on and on. For the last 11 years, iSports Radio has been bringing you amazing content ranging from interviewing legendary athletes, coaches, and other authorized media personnel to building tailor-made shows dedicated to all major sports around the country. Thank you to everyone for all of your support and for making IE Sports Radio your direct feed for all that sports. A huge shout out to our sponsors, Planet Jerky, Premium Brisket Beef Jerky, and Vital Apparel. So without any further delay, let's get on into what our sponsors are all about. I'll see you all in a little bit.
Hi, eSports Radio fans. This show is brought to you by Planet Jerky Premium Brisket Beef Jerky. Planet Jerky is the official jerky of the 2022 California League champion Lake Elsinore Storm, Single-A affiliate of the San Diego Padres. This all-brisket jerky has gluten-free options, contains no MSG, no sodium nitrate, is low in sugar, and high in protein. Go to their website at planetjerky.net and follow them on Instagram at Planet Jerky. Planet Jerky, the jerky that's on a whole other planet.
Rise and shine. It's 4 a.m. The stars are still out. The sun is beneath the horizon, but it's time to punch in and go to work. The comfort of your warm-ups turns into the grinding out of your reps as the clinking and the clinking of the plates create a symphony of euphoria. There's no other feeling like it. Earn it, burn it, and take what's yours. IE Sports Radio has proudly partnered with Vital Apparel, a brand that not only fits great, but also promotes and donates to mental health research. Use our code IESR to get 15% off their comfortable and inspiring gym wear and help them on their amazing journey to support mental health. Go hard, take part in your iron therapy, and be strong. Because when your mental health is as strong as you are, there's no telling how far you'll go. For the last 10 years, IE Sports Radio has been bringing you amazing content ranging from interviewing legendary athletes, coaches, and other authorized media personnel to building tailor-made shows dedicated to all major sports cities around the country. Make sure to follow us at IE Sports Radio on X, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube to keep up with the latest in sports and with all of our shows. Also, make sure to check out our daily updated website at iesportsradio.com. At iesportsradio.com, you can see our daily show schedule and check out all of our show pages with personal bios to learn a little bit more about each of our awesome hosts. In addition to our show pages, you can catch the IE Sports Radio blog, Hall of Fame, Fans of the Month page, and our merchandise shop including t-shirts, tank tops, caps, long sleeves, hoodies, and more. For now over a decade here at IE Sports Radio, we've continued to be by the fans, for the fans, and we thank you all for your support and for making IE Sports Radio your direct feed for all that is sports.
That's right, everybody. Definitely check out all of our amazing shows and also our sponsors. Also, make sure to subscribe on YouTube. We would greatly appreciate it. And we would also appreciate you to follow us on X, formerly known as Twitter, at IE Sports Radio. And the way you can follow Setpoint on social media is on X and TikTok at set_point.ie. You can also follow me personally as well at Teran Rodriguez 1. You can also follow Setpoint on Instagram as well at set_point.iesr. That's where most of my content is starting to go. And that's where it's starting to blow up because some of my clips that I've been posting has just been spreading like wildfire, but I digress. Anyway, so with all that being said, let's get on into the volleyball action. So week 14 of the NCAA men's volleyball season, we have to start off with that. Pretty much the action and exciting stuff started on Thursday, pretty much. I mean, there was some action on Tuesday and Wednesday, but nothing like too like big time and whatnot. So yeah, the NCAA men's volleyball season was kind of exciting. I mean, we obviously had the big one. We had the big one, the big upset where we all know what happened. Where were you when that big upset happened? So yeah, nothing. So yeah, the Wednesday we didn't really have too much. I mean, nothing too out of the ordinary. So Thursday we got. Let's not dance around it. We got to talk about the big upset. Number 6 Pepperdine upsetting number 1 UCLA in 5. Down goes number 1, and it feels like there was the Malibu magic happened because this was the last time Pepperdine were to play UCLA in Firestone Fieldhouse. And there were a lot of amazing memories when it came to Firestone Fieldhouse, one of which was Pepperdine taking down UCLA in 5 in the MPSF tournament semifinals. So it just felt like this was Pepperdine's match. And through sets 1 through 3, they were all close. Set 4 was pretty much all UCLA for the most part. And then set 5, Pepperdine fell behind, and it felt like this was going to be UCLA's match, but Pepperdine was able to get the lead, and they were able to hold on. So Pepperdine this was an unbelievable win for the Waves, and what a way to pretty much your final season in Firestone Fieldhouse, and you ended it off with a big-time win over the number 1 team. Though there's going to be more matches. They've got matches against USC, and I think they play Stanford this week, but I digress. Anyway, so Cole Hartke led Pepperdine with 23 points. He also had Ryan Barnett with 15 points. That was pretty much your two-headed monster right there, as they combined for 38 out of Pepperdine's 54 kills. The next kill leader after that was No Mathei, who had 5 kills. As a team, Pepperdine hit 290 compared to UCLA's 292. So that was a very big win. And Jacob Riley was just a stud for Pepperdine. He had 9 digs. So Ford Harmon also had 9 digs as well. So overall, it was just an impressive win for the Waves. For UCLA, they were led by Sean Kelly, who had 22 kills. Zach Rahman had 15 kills. Cam Thorne had 10 kills. David Decker, 9 kills. So my takeaway for this matchup is this. It's time we start including Pepperdine in the national championship conversation. They definitely have that presence. They definitely have the team to do so. They have Cole Hartke. They have Ryan Barnett, James Eady whenever he gets hot, so on and so forth. I think this Pepperdine team is really dangerous. But that being said, I feel they'll go as far as Hartke and Barnett takes them. And then for UCLA, I don't think this loss is anything as bad as most people think it is, because I think it's better UCLA loses now than they lose when it truly matters the most. As look, UCLA, I feel was due for a loss. I mean, I didn't expect it to be in a 5-set barn burner, but man, it's tough for UCLA to lose. But at least they didn't lose like in 3. I mean, the 5-setters were eventually going to catch up to them, and they took on a good Pepperdine team. This Pepperdine team has played some solid teams. They played the likes of Long Beach State, lost in 4. They lost to UC Irvine in 4. They beat Hawaii, but they also lost to Hawaii. So Hawaii's been battle tested, but UCLA has been battle tested as well. So I think for the Bruins, they have nothing to hang their heads over, especially since Saturday we're about to see that they were able to right their wrongs. And then some NEC action. We had Loyola sweeping McKendree. Kind of surprised that was a sweep. Ball State swept Northern Kentucky. Purdue Fort Wayne swept Queens. But then we had this upset. This was a 3-set match, but tied for number 16, Lewis took down number 11, Lindenwood, in 3. This is kind of classified as a bad loss for the Lions. I feel Lewis is not as good just because Lewis does not have Oson O's. Yeah, he's still not in the lineup. But yeah, no Oson O's for Lewis. And Lindenwood, this kind of hurts their chances of being an at-large. So Lindenwood's going to have to be the automatic qualifier from the MIVA. Otherwise, they won't be dancing by any means. Lewis was led by Cameron Hoying, who had 16 kills. You got to remember, Hoying was a setter, converted into opposite after the Oson O's injury. They also got 8 kills from Daniel Haber. They also got 8 kills from Cole Schweitzer. Lewis, as a team, they hit 324, while Lindenwood only hit 210. So, and you know, Lindenwood was a little quiet when they only had 1 service ace, one of which was to, though one didn't even go to Zach Solomon, which is kind of rare, but what can you do? Yeah, it was just one of those types of matches for Lindenwood, and it's unfortunate, but I think Lindenwood's still having a solid season, but with the automatic qualifiers most likely going to the likes from the Big West and the MPSF, the margin of error is just so slim when it comes to the MIVA teams and any other team not in the MPSF and in the Big West. But it is what it is. So on Thursday, I also went to a match. I went to BYU Vanguard at Vanguard University. So this was kind of the battle of 2 teams going in different directions. BYU was actually going in the wrong direction. They had actually lost 4 straight matches, while Vanguard actually had won 4 straight matches. Albeit BYU's opponents, the teams that they lost to, were actually really good opponents, having lost to Stanford and Pepperdine twice, while Vanguard beat UC Merced and I think it was Jessup twice, which actually puts them in a very good position. Like going into this match, BYU and Vanguard were actually tied for fourth place in the MPSF conference, which that's kind of a little misguiding when you look at it. But in the end, BYU was able to sweep Vanguard. It was my first time seeing the Cougars, as BYU was led by Connor Oldaney, who had 11 kills. They also got 8 kills from Jonathan Talon Tafuga. As a team, BYU hit 291. They also got 12 digs from Jackson Fife. Fife also had 10-plus digs in the second match against Vanguard, which I thought was pretty good. Meanwhile, for Vanguard, they were led by Grant Veldman, who had 10 kills. Grant Veldman was spectacular last week, and he's been a bright spot for this Vanguard team. I know it didn't really show in all of his numbers, but he was still pretty solid. Jacob Baston had 10 digs off the bench, which was solid. Unfortunately, it was just not enough, as Vanguard's 4-game win streak was snapped, while the 4-game skid of BYU was halted and snapped as well. And then in Big West Conference action, we had number 8 UC Santa Barbara taking down number 18 CSUN in 4. So, man, I feel bad for CSUN. CSUN was without its star player Jalen Phillips, so they had to move Malcolm King to the right side, and he actually did pretty good. He had 10 kills, he had 467, and he also had 6 digs. Noah Daupfner led CSUN with 11 kills. I'm going to take the assumption that Jalen Phillips might have actually aggravated something in the Long Beach match the previous week, but unfortunately, they would have needed to play some darn good volleyball to take down Santa Barbara, as George Bruning led the way for the Gauchos with 12 kills. They also got 8 kills from Riggs Guy, as the Gauchos were able to bounce back after suffering 2 losses to Hawaii. So you had that right there. And then we jumped to Friday, where we had a plethora of really good matches. Where to start? So let's actually start with the NEC, the Northeast Conference, which does not seem to get a whole lot of love just because it's most likely a one-bid conference. But there was some pretty darn good wins from some of these teams, because only the top 4 teams advanced to the NEC tournament. Every other team goes home, as UMES, or University of Maryland East Shore, took down LIU in 5 on Friday, and they also took him down in 3 the following night. And then FDU, Fairleigh Dickinson, took down Damon in 4 on Friday, and then they also took down Damon in 3, and that's a pretty darn good opponent. So, yeah, NEC action is something not to be slept on. Like, this conference is starting to give the MIVA a run for its money in terms of teams that are going to be going all out in terms of an all-out battle. So you had those matchups right there, and you're about to see that the NEC did not disappoint, as we'll get into a notable Saturday result in a little bit. But looking at some of the other conferences, you had Penn State taking down Charleston on the road in 3 on Friday and on Saturday. You had BYU taking down Vanguard again in 3. You had Sacred Heart taking down Princeton in EIVA action in 5, which that was actually Sacred Heart's first road EIVA win since 2022. So you could say the Pioneers were long overdue for a win over Princeton. So you had that right there. You had Jessup picking up its first MPSF win, taking down Menlo in straight sets. You also had USC taking down Stanford in 4, they took them down in 3 on Friday, and then they took them down in 4 on Saturday, which I thought was a very big win for the Trojans, because they're now going to get tested. This is where USC is now going to start to get tested. They had won, I think, 6 straight matches going into the Stanford series, but they hadn't really beaten anyone notable, except for maybe Penn State, but I digress. And then also, number 3, Long Beach State took down number 13, UC San Diego on the road in 4. Long Beach State was without Jake Pizzanti at setter, so Island Doty had to fill in the position, and he actually did a pretty good job. So it's good that Long Beach State has depth in case someone struggles, or in case someone has a bad night, or in case someone is injured. So Long Beach State did a really good job taking out UC San Diego, though the Tritons really challenged Long Beach State, but the Beach was able to prevail. They knew a loss or 2 would hurt their chances of having any sort of chance of getting the number 1 seed, though you're about to see that their odds of getting the number 1 seed of the Big West Conference tournament and the regular season Big West Conference title is about to dip. And Long Beach State took down UC San Diego in 4 on Saturday, though that match was also pretty dramatic, as well as UCSD almost forced a 5th set, but the Beach was able to hold on and win in 4. All right, now let's go to the Friday match that I attended. So it was number 2 Hawaii at number 5 UC Irvine. You already know I had to be here when it came to this top 5 matchup. And it did not disappoint. There was a lot that happened. There were 2 red cards given out. There was just a lot of clutch plays from clutch players. In the end, Hawaii was able to outlast the Anteaters in 5. And the 5th set was decided 18-16. UC Irvine actually held leads in set 4. They actually held quite a little bit of a lead, and then Hawaii came roaring back. And then the 5th set, Hawaii was up 11-8. UC Irvine eventually rattled off 5 straight points. But UC Irvine unfortunately let up on the gas. And it's a bummer because UC Irvine could have definitely used another top 5 win. They already have one early in the season against USC, but I mean, again, they would also use a top 3 win as well, but I digress. But yeah, oh man, you got to feel bad for every UC Irvine fan in the stands because the Brent Event Center was rocking. But the way UC Irvine lost the match, they had a service error at 16-16, and then they hit the ball just slightly out at 17-16, giving Hawaii the match. But Hawaii had a lot of great performers in terms of their match, as Christian Tatrisky led the way with 16 kills. He also had 8 digs. Louis Sakanoko had 14 kills. He also had 7 digs. Quentin Greenidge had 11 digs. Adrian Rohr had 12 kills and 11 digs. Teran Rosenthal nearly had a triple-double. He had 9 kills, 53 assists, and 10 digs. So that's 2 Big West Conference setters that have nearly gotten triple-doubles. The other one was Cole Schobel with UC Santa Barbara. But one day we will see an NCAA men's volleyball triple-double, which would be really awesome. Also Teran Rosenthal had 6 blocks. I know everyone gave Teran a lot of flack on the internet after he kicked the ball to the official, but that was inadvertent. That was just a wrong place at the wrong time thing for Teran. He didn't intentionally mean to kick the ball into the official, which is unfortunate, but sometimes it happens, and sometimes that's the way the ball bounces, and that's the way it goes awry. I also got to give some love to Travell Jordan. He had 12 kills, 0 hitting errors, and he hit 750. So in other words, he hit 3/4 of his kills, which I thought was pretty darn cool. And he also had 4 blocks as well. So Justin Todd also had 6 kills. He also had 6 blocks. He hit 557. So my overall takeaway for Hawaii UC Irvine, Hawaii grinded that one out. And I will say, if they didn't get those yellow or red cards, I think they would have been a little bit more focused and dialed in. I think the red cards kind of deterred them, and that's not what you really want to see if you're Hawaii, just because they're a better team than that. They're more disciplined than that. Though they are a work in progress still, they're still a very darn good, dangerous team. Meanwhile, for UC Irvine, they were led by Andre Okanovich, who had 22 kills. Will Darcy had 14 kills. Micah Goss had 12 kills. Andon Kiriakou had 8 kills and 11 digs. Shane Aitken had 11 digs. Trevor Clark had 7 digs. So my takeaway for UC Irvine is this. How many more times are they going to be breaking their fans' hearts? Okay, that's not true. But that aside, how many more heartbreakers is UC Irvine going to be having? This is like their 4th straight. I'm sorry, not their 4th straight. Their 4th 5th set loss. Because going into this match, they had actually played 7 5-setters, but then, man, losing this one I think kind of hurt more, just because they lost a 5-setter to USC in overtime. They lost a 5-setter to UCLA, which did not have overtime, but that was a match where a 5-setter where it should have maybe not have gone 5, but it is what it is. And then they lost a 5-setter to UC Santa Barbara, where they actually had 2 match points, but the Gauchos were able to escape and only needed 1 match point to clinch the match. So yeah, UCI has been through a lot of heartbreakers this year, and it sucks for them. I still think they're a contender, but here's the thing. It's like you gotta wonder, like, how much do they need? How much more do they need in order to get over the hump? Can they get over the hump against the likes of Long Beach State, against UCLA? Can they get past USC in terms of the quarterfinals? That still remains to be seen. So we'll have to wait and see. All right, but that's that for the Saturday matches or Friday matches. So Saturday, like I said, we had UMES sweeping LIU, FDU swept Damon. And speaking of the NEC, we had maybe the stunner of all stunners. We had Manhattan pulling off a 5-set win against St. Francis. This was a really good match right here. And keep in mind, Manhattan is only in its first year. The Manhattan Jaspers, remember that name. And yeah, Manhattan doesn't have the overall record that most teams have, but this is a Manhattan team that has definitely been impressive in terms of the NEC. As Caston Owens led the way with 18 kills. Kai Patchell had 15 kills. Wojtek Nowak added 9 kills. As a team, Manhattan hit 310, which was pretty solid. Only missed 15 serves, which is pretty good. St. Francis, on the other hand, they missed 25 serves, only had 4 service aces, as Brady Stump led the way with 13 kills. They also got 12 kills each from Nathan Zini and Cole Dorn, who had 10 digs. As a team, St. Francis hit 321, but it wasn't enough as the Jaspers were able to take down St. Francis, the Red Flash, in 5. Just an unbelievable win right there for Manhattan. That might be their biggest win of the season. And remember, they're only in their first year as a NCAA men's volleyball program, which is incredible if you ask me. You also had in the EIVA Sacred Heart taking out Princeton in 4, which was a very good win. But man, if you're Princeton, you're just going through it this year. This is like one of those years where just nothing is going correct. It's not a matter of Princeton's not good. It's just a matter of Princeton is a little on the young side. They had a few tough losses in non-conference play that kind of hurt them. So I think Princeton still could be a sneaky good team, but they're kind of running out of time here. Then you also had, in terms of the EIVA, like I said, Penn State took down Charleston in 3. That pretty much clinched the regular season title for Penn State, unless I don't think George Mason is anywhere near the standings in terms of the EIVA, but I digress. To the MIVA, we had McKendree, number 12 McKendree, taking down tied for number 16 Lewis in 4. That's a nice bounce back win for the Bearcats. And then Loyola Chicago swept Lindenwood. Very impressive win right there for the Ramblers. And like I mentioned in MPSF play, USC took down Stanford in 4. And then Big West Conference play, UCSB took down CSUN in 4. Long Beach State took down UCSD in 4. Jessup swept Menlo on the road. And then this was kind of the get-back game for UCLA. The number 1 Bruins took down the number 6 Waves at Pauley Pavilion in 4. Nice bounce-back win, as after losing the first set, UCLA was able to take control the rest of the way, as the gutty little Bruins were led by Sean Kelly, who had 15 kills. David Decker added 14 kills. Zach Rama had 11 kills. As a team, UCLA also had 10 service aces, and they hit 396, which was very darn good. I mean, I mean, UCLA wasn't going to be down for much longer. The demise of UCLA was greatly exaggerated, as Ryan Barnett led the way for Pepperdine with 15 kills. Cole Hart, he had 12 kills. Noah Mathey added 7 kills as well, and James Eady had 7 kills. But it wasn't enough, as Pepperdine couldn't pull off the back-to-back wins over UCLA. So I think the day of rest kind of helped UCLA, in my opinion. I think the Bruins needed that one day of rest to kind of reset itself and kind of wake up. So in my opinion, I think UCLA they're still that team. I think they're still on pace to being the national champs. But if they have a tough loss like that in the near future, it can. You never know. So UCLA winning in 4 also was big as well, just because UCLA now has the tiebreaker over Pepperdine in terms of like seeding in the MPSF tournament, as Pepperdine needed 5 sets to beat UCLA, while UCLA needed 4 sets to beat Pepperdine. So in terms of set head-to-head tiebreaker, UCLA has that tiebreaker. So yeah, so if it boils down to Pepperdine and UCLA sharing the regular season conference title, UCLA would get the tiebreaker and the number 1 overall seed, which I think would be good because then UCLA wouldn't have to play USC. But UCLA is not out of the woods just yet. They still have 4 more matches left, and then I know they've got BYU to end off the regular season. I forget who they have this week. I feel it's like some team that they have. It's not Concordia Irvine. It's not BYU. They play. It's UC Merced. So nothing against Merced, but I think UCLA should be fine this week, barring anything drastic. But I digress. Anyway, moving back along to Saturday's matches. So Jessup also took down Menlo a second time. So that's a nice win for Jessup, getting 2 wins in the MPSF. And that's pretty much that for all the other matches. Now let's go over the third match that I attended this past week. Yeah, I attended 3 straight matches, which I thought was pretty cool. So Hawaii took down UC Irvine. Number 2 Hawaii took down number 5 UC Irvine in straight sets. Though the sets were pretty close. UC Irvine had their chances. Unfortunately, they sadly just could not take advantage of the situation, and they just got caught in some bad stretches where Hawaii capitalized on UC Irvine's mistakes. As Hawaii was led by Christian Tetrisky, who had 20 kills. He hit 448. I've said this before, and I'll say it again. Christian Tetrisky is back. He had a back injury, and it was looking pretty grim in the first Long Beach State match. But Tetrisky has really worked his way back up, and he's starting to become the effective All-American that we all saw last year. Louis Sakanoko and Adrian Rohr both had 8 kills, and that was pretty much that in terms of like some of the notable stats. Adrian Rohr also had 2 service aces. As a team, Hawaii hit 453. Even though they only had 2 service aces, they served the ball really tough, especially Adrian Rohr. Quentin Greenidge had 9 digs, which I thought was pretty good. Overall, it was just a great week for Hawaii, and that puts them in a really good situation. So if Hawaii wins their 2 matches this week, they'll not only clinch a share of the Big West Conference regular season title, but they'll also claim the number 1 seed in the Big West Conference tournament. And that's massive right there, just because they would avoid facing either Long Beach State or UC Irvine in the tournament. And those are 2 teams that are really darn good. Those 2 are probably going to be duking it out for the number 2 and number 3 seed, respectfully. For UC Irvine, they were led by Will Darcy, who had 13 kills. Andre Okanovich had 9 kills. They also got 4 kills each from Andon Kiriakou and Micah Goss. So it was a tough loss for UC Irvine, but something unique, something really cool that happened was Andre Okanovich served 4 straight service aces. Well, he had 4 aces in a serving run. Actually, no, it was 4 straight service aces, which, man, the thing is that UC Irvine was down so many points. It was match point for Hawaii at 25, I think it was like 25-15, if not 25-16, something like that. I think it was 25-16, and then Andre Okanovich steals 3 straight serve. Well, one tough serve, which eventually was blocked, and then UC Irvine and then Jokanovic dealt another ace, and then Jokanovic had another ace, and then Jokanovic had another ace, and then after the timeout, after Hawaii's second timeout, Jokanovic had another ace. So he had 4 straight aces, and just like that, UC Irvine was once down 24-16. They were only down 24-22. But on that next serve, Christian Tetrisky got the ball, and he was able to tag the sideline. I thought it was out, but it was from my angle, it was tough to tell. But that's why we have replay system, and Christian Tetrisky called game, getting his 20th kill of the night as he was able to get Hawaii the win. So for UC Irvine, this was their first loss that did not result in a 5-setter. So kind of a little step backwards, but at the same time, I think the Anteaters are still up there in terms of talent. It's just a matter of, can they get over the hump in terms of like having a top 3 win? They're running out of chances though, because they've got CSUN this week. But the following week, they've got Long Beach State. I imagine they're going to have better answers for Long Beach following the CSUN week, but I digress. We didn't have it. That's that for week 14 of the NCAA men's volleyball season. We didn't have any matches on Sunday because it was Easter. So let's go to the AVCA coaches or the AVCA poll for this week. So nothing really changed. Only Pepperdine went up. Hawaii and USC both got first place votes, deservingly so for Hawaii. McKendree and Lindenwood swapped spots, and that was it. There was no true drastic change for the AVCA men's volleyball poll. So that was pretty cool. That was pretty interesting right there. As for the off the block men's volleyball media poll, it was an interesting poll. So 1 through 3 pretty much stayed the same. Number 4 is now occupied by both USC and UC Irvine. I guess the voters thought that UC Irvine hasn't really deserves a little bit more love as opposed to USC, who hasn't really beaten anybody. I disagree. I think USC deserves to be ranked ahead of UC Irvine just because they don't have any bad losses outside of the UC Irvine loss, and that can't even be classified as a bad loss. USC's only losses were to UCLA, which is still number 1 in the nation, and then UC Irvine, which is right there with them. So you have that right there. Pepperdine was number 6, which now we're all kind of be eating crow regarding that, but I digress. Ball State was 7, Lindenwood 8, Loyola 9, and UC Santa Barbara was 10. So for this week's poll, that's going to be released tomorrow as of this recording. I voted UCLA 1, Hawaii 2, Long Beach State 3, USC 4. I put Pepperdine at 5. I said to someone on Instagram, a content creator, Joe McCurdy, I said, if Hawaii beats UC Irvine twice, I think Pepperdine deserves the right to move up a spot to 4, if not 5. And I put Pepperdine at 5 just because I know UC Irvine beat them, but Pepperdine does have a win over over Hawaii, and they also have a win over UCLA. So that's why I think Pepperdine is deserving of being ranked ahead of UC Irvine. Now, as for USC, I still think USC deserves to be ranked ahead of Pepperdine. I know the Waves obviously had that great win over UCLA, but USC came so close to knocking off the Waves. They came so close. They had 1 match point, but they just could not take advantage of it. But that USC Pepperdine series is going to be enticing in that final week of the regular season before conference tournaments fully swing. So that's my thought process of USC Pepperdine and UC Irvine. I still had Ball State at 7. I put Loyola at 8, UC Santa Barbara at 9, and Lindenwood at 10. Lindenwood's loss to Lewis kind of hurt them. I would put BYU back in the top 10, but I think Lindenwood's still having a better season than the likes of BYU, in my opinion. And that's no knock against BYU, in my opinion. I think BYU's still having a solid season. And in terms of like bracketology from someone, another content creator on Instagram in terms of NCAA men's volleyball, they actually have BYU getting the final at-large spot. So you got to remember that there's a 5 at-larges. There's going to be 6 automatic qualifiers. Any Big West, MPSF, EIVA, NEVA, the SIAC, the Conference Carolinas, and the NEC. So that's 7 automatic qualifiers, and then there's going to be 5 at-larges. There's going to be 8 automatic qualifiers because the Golden Lakes Valley Conference is a conference happening this season, but it's not eligible just because it's a new conference. So there you go. All right. But yeah, that's pretty much who I have in my top 10 in terms of the off the block media poll. The official poll will be released tomorrow. So you have that right there. All right. So now let's preview week 15. This is this time for real. It's the last full week of conference, the last full week until conference tournaments start. So be prepared because the SIAC conference will kick off conference tournaments next week. So Tuesday, there's not really anything happening on Monday and Tuesday. Wednesday, Fort Valley State and Edward Waters are facing one another. Now, this was kind of going to be my de facto matchup in terms of the SIAC conference or the SIAC. Unfortunately, Fort Valley State has pretty much clinched that SIAC conference, or SIAC, just because they're really good. And I think not a lot is stopping this Fort Valley State team. My only thing is Fort Valley State's losses, or their Fort Valley State's wins over, I forget who they placed. I think wasn't it like Central State? Yeah, Central State. Is the Isaiah Fed out long term, or is he out for just not for too long? So that's the big question right there. And then Mount Olive Barton is kind of a sneaky good matchup in the Conference Carolinas. That's a decent matchup. Then you got Belmont Abbey and North Greenville, another solid matchup in the Conference Carolinas. Just because I think those four teams are kind of like the four horsemen of the Conference Carolinas. So you have that right there. And then, wait, what's going on here? We have nothing. Wait, what? Sorry, I'm just looking at my dates here. So yeah, Wednesday those are all the matches on Wednesday. Thursday we have Loyola Chicago at Purdue Fort Wayne. Not much is stopping this Loyola team as they're on a mission. This is their week to try to hopefully reenact their wrongs and try to get that number 1 seed in the MIVA tournament. Lewis also hosts Ball State, or Lewis plays at Ball State, which would be a fun matchup. Ohio State McKendree is pretty darn good. Also on Thursday, we've got Big West Conference action with CSUN at UC Irvine, which I'm going to be at. Jessup's Concordia Irvine is an interesting matchup just because that could be the de facto matchup for either one of those teams in the MPSF, just because you never know what could happen in terms of like the final few MPSF tournament spots. I feel that can go to either one of those teams. I know Vanguard pretty much is in good position, but I know UCLA is pretty much a lock. USC is a lock. Pepperdine, BYU, Stanford, Vanguard should probably be a lock. They'd be the 6th seed. Concordia Irvine, I think, would be the 7th seed. So between Jessup, Merced, and Menlo, that's probably going to be the de facto matchup, or the de facto 4 right there. So the Jessup, Concordia Irvine could be 4 seeding. So that's something to watch for in terms of the MPSF. Then Friday, you have Princeton at George Mason, which, man, if there's ever a match that Princeton needs to win, it's that match. They need some sort of like start me up. They need to get back on track in the worst way. And George Mason isn't really the best team, especially since they don't have Liam French. He is out for the year. But Princeton just can't underestimate George Mason. Jay Hosek is a fantastic coach, and so is Sam Schweisky, by the way. But at the same time, it's like Princeton needs to get some sort of wins going. So we'll see what happens. And then a kind of a little crossover between the MIVA and the Conference Carolinas, Belmont Abbey at Queens. This is kind of an interesting, sneaky good matchup. It's kind of the battle for North Carolina right here, or the battle of the Carolinas. So that's kind of a nice little matchup right there. You also got, I was going to say Erskine Mount Olive, but I think Mount Olive could probably win that one fairly easily. Penn State Sacred Heart. Okay, this is an interesting matchup. It's kind of interesting, but Penn State should be able to handle Sacred Heart just because Sacred Heart, they're coming off of 2 wins over Princeton, but can they do the same against Penn State? That's a wait-and-see matchup. And then also on Friday, we've got Stanford at Pepperdine. That's an interesting matchup right there just because Pepperdine, they're coming off of their first MPSF conference loss, and Stanford's still playing some of its best ball. I know it hasn't shown in the last 4 matches against UCLA and USC, but I think for Stanford's sake, they have a chance against Pepperdine. But we shall see. It's tough to win in Malibu, but we shall see. Anyway, and then this is kind of the match or series of the week. You've got USC at BYU, which the 2 teams will also face each other on Saturday. All right, USC, you've done really great so far. You've won 8 straight matches. That being said, this is the first match. Yeah, the first match of the season that USC is going to be traveling outside of the state of California. So, man, this is going to be a really big test for USC. Can they win at BYU? Because BYU, even though they haven't really had the greatest of seasons, I think they're still a threat when playing at Smith Fieldhouse. But if we get the BYU that played against Pepperdine and lost to them in 4 both times, I think USC should be fine in this matchup. But USC knows the magnitude of this matchup against BYU because they don't want to be on the warpath of UCLA. But then again, they also don't want to be on the warpath of Pepperdine. I think the USC would match up better against Pepperdine more so than UCLA. Though I think they kind of match up well against UCLA. It all depends on what night UCLA is having and what night USC is having. And then jumping to the Big West, we've got Hawaii at UC San Diego. This will be the last time Hawaii will be facing a SoCal opponent this week, well, in terms of their 2 matches, until the Big West Conference tournament. So I would kind of say don't get used to being here in terms of SoCal Hawaii. But like I said, Hawaii, they should be fine in terms of UC San Diego. I can't imagine Hawaii having a letdown spot unless UC San Diego really plays its best game. Or, I'm sorry, if Hawaii plays its worst game and then UC San Diego plays its best game. But honestly, with the way Hawaii is playing, Hawaii at this point, it would take a miracle for them to lose the number 1 seed of the Big West Conference tournament. Though I can't imagine this. I think Hawaii is going to have a grinded out match, the first match against UC San Diego. And then the second match, they're going to figure it out, and then they're going to sweep UCSD. Could I be wrong? Most likely. Will I be wrong? I hope not. And then also on Friday, you've got UC Santa Barbara at Long Beach State. That's a good matchup right there. So here's the thing. I wouldn't count out Santa Barbara in terms of getting the 3 seed. Santa Barbara knows if they get that 4 seed, they could have to face Hawaii in the Big West Conference semifinals. Whereas if they get the 3 seed, they'd most likely get CSUN in the first round of the Big West Conference tournament, and they'd get UC Irvine, or they could probably get UC Irvine, which I know they match up well against. I know the 4 seed could probably mean they could win that matchup against UCSD or CSUN, depending on who is in that 5 seed or 6 seed. But the 4 seed would most likely mean you'd be facing Hawaii in the Big West Conference semifinals. And you got to remember that Hawaii is most likely going to have a bye. The only way Hawaii doesn't get a bye is if Hawaii self-destructs, which isn't going to be happening. So Long Beach State, UC Santa Barbara. Long Beach is on a roll. They've won 4 straight, but can they take down a very good UCSB team? I am so tempted to go to this UCSB Long Beach State match. I really want to go, but I also have plans on Friday. Oh, man, dude. This freaking sucks. I really got to choose between UCSB, Long Beach State, and then another match that I'm going to on Friday. We'll see what happens, though. Maybe I'll have to consider it, but we shall see. And then to close off the Friday matches, we've got Vanguard Menlo on Friday and Saturday. Another de facto matchup. I mean, if Menlo wants to have any sort of chance of making the MPSF tournament, they're going to need to take down Vanguard. And this is kind of the battle of the 2 former NAIA teams, which I think is kind of going to be a really good matchup. If Vanguard wins both these matches against Menlo, I think they're a lock for the MPSF tournament because the top 8 teams of the MPSF tournament make the MPSF, or the top 8 teams of the MPSF make the MPSF tournament. And I imagine with the way Vanguard is winning against some of the teams that aren't ranked, I think they should be fine in terms of getting the 6th seed. But a lot can happen in the MPSF, so we shall see when it comes to Vanguard. And then Saturday, we have Long Beach State at UC Santa Barbara, which obviously it's just Long Beach State UCSB at Santa Barbara. You've got UC Irvine at CSUN, which is basically just UC Irvine now traveling to Northridge. Hawaii UCSD round 2, which is basically Hawaii playing UCSD for a second time. Then Penn State Sacred Heart. And then this is kind of an interesting series in terms of the NEC. On Saturday and I think Friday, Friday and Saturday, you've got UMES at Fairleigh Dickinson. So I don't know who needs to know this, but FDU actually leads the leads the NEC in men's volleyball in terms of like the standings. I would have never predicted FDU, but you got to give it up to Carl France. And this NEC has just been all over the place, which I think is really awesome. I am all for this conference being crazy, but FDU's got a pretty big test. They face UMES, which is certainly no pushover. I think UMES has done an excellent job this year in its first year. And there's a reason why they had the whole 30 for 30 documentary on ESPN called Why Not Us? Why not UMES? Why not UMES making the NCAA tournament in its first year? Why not? But FDU has also been equally as good, and they have some studs that can play. So keep an eye out for UMES FDU on Friday and on Saturday. And that's Charleston NJIT can also be sneaky good. I think NJIT still needs to lock up that number 2 seed in the EIVA tournament, but they know for a fact that they can't underestimate anybody at this point. Princeton George Mason round 2 is going to be good. Ohio State Lindenwood also is going to be good. Louis Purdue Fort Wayne should also be solid. And then here's probably the match of the week. Loyola at Ball State. So this is probably for first place in the MIVA. Ball State controls its own destiny. So the only way Ball State doesn't control its own destiny is if they implode and they, have a self-destruction and they lose at the worst time. Just because, for starters, they're just on a whole other level. Like Ball State leads Loyola in the standings by 1 game. The only way Ball State doesn't win its conference and get that number 1 seed is if they just implode. And this is the last week of MIVA conference play because they've got Lewis and Loyola, and they host both of those teams. So that they've got the even bigger luxury in terms of those matches this week too. So I think it's going to be very fun in terms of those matchups. I mean, MIVA conference play is still really much a big time thing right there. So I think it's going to be very fun. I think this week is going to be a fun week in terms of like the NCAA men's volleyball side of things. And then I guess looking at the NEC standings, FDU and St. Francis are both tied atop of the conference standings. The interesting thing is that FDU has won 6 straight. So if you're putting 2 plus 2 perfectly, they actually lost. They lost to Barton and George Mason, and they also lost twice to Manhattan. Other than that, they swept the series against LIU. They swept the series against DeViewville, and then they swept the series against Damon. So it's going to be tough against UMES, and then St. Francis is going to be even tougher just because they're going to have to play at Loretto. But that said, FDU has a chance in terms of their destiny. So if they can win the matches they're supposed to win, even though it's going to be tough this week, they definitely have a shot to win, to basically be the number 1 seed or possibly at the very least make the tournament. Because FDU is having a season to remember. They took down Princeton earlier in the year. And then also they have 12 overall wins. And those 12 wins are actually the most in program history. They've only had 12 wins one other time. That was 2 seasons ago. So one more win for FDU, and they surpass the most wins they've had in the season. And keep in mind, FDU is not old by any means. They're only I think they're only in their I want to say it's they started out in 2018, or was it 2022? Either way, they're not an old program. They're one of the more still young programs. But either way, that's something to make note of in terms of the NEC. And then, like I said, in the MIVA, Ball State and Loyola is the match of the week right here. So there's that right there in terms of the notable matches to watch for. And yeah, that is that for the NCAA men's volleyball side of things. It's starting to be, like I said, this is the final week for real this time in terms of conference matches before the MIVA gets underway, the MIVA conference tournament and the SIAC conference tournament, which I think is going to be pretty fun. Both those conferences are going to be really fun. I think the MIVA is the top 4 seeds host, and then the highest remaining overall seed will be the host seed for the host team for the semifinals. I doubt I'm wrong, but we'll see. All right, but that'll do it for the NCAA men's volleyball side of things. We're going to take ourselves a quick commercial break. When we come back, we've got some NCAA beach volleyball to discuss, and then we've got some League One volleyball as well as some MLV to discuss. So keep it locked here. You're listening to Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that sports. We'll be right back after this.
Hello, everyone. My name is Daryl Kinsey Jr., and I'm welcoming you to take another lap with the fastest show on IE Sports Radio. Yes, this is the Extra Mile with me and my co-hosts Christopher Lehman and Michael Ward. We talk everything racing from NASCAR to IndyCar to Formula One to limited hydroplanes, endurance racing, the NHRA, and more. So come join us for an hour of great racing talk and a lot of fun as well on the Extra Mile, Thursdays at 8 p.m. only on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Hockey fans, I'm Adam Kernick.
And I'm Zach Puplis.
Together, we are the newest version of Hockey Talk on IE Sports Radio, The Neutral Zone.
Zone.
We love hockey, but we also know it's not everyone's first sport. So we want to make this show as much for new fans as for the diehards.
Whether you can name all the Swedes on the 08 Red Wings Stanley Cup team, or if you can't tell if Varlamov is a goalie or the latest trendy vodka, we're here to help. With facts, figures, and outrageous fans, we bring you all the hard-hitting hockey news you can handle, while still keeping it fun and on the rails. Well, mostly.
So tune in every week as we go around the hockey world, from college to Canada, the minors and the majors, and everywhere in between.
So bring your cellies.
And your one-timers.
You wicked wristas.
And be sure to protect your 5-hole.
Catch the Neutral Zone every week on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
We promise not to pick on the Arizona Coyotes every episode.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Davidson.
It's your boy, Dentarius Lava.
And we're the hosts of Fast Break here on IE Sports Radio, where we discuss everything in the world of basketball from prep to the pros.
You guys should definitely check us out, man. Sunday, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. We got all the basketball information you guys need, so we look forward to you guys listening in.
And please do, because we are the best basketball show on this side of the Mississippi. And please do check us out on Twitter at FastBreakISR. D-Lock, where's our time again?
8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. That gives you guys plenty of time on a Sunday.
Tune in.
What's up, everybody? This is Teran Rodriguez. Are you a fan of volleyball? Are you a fan of thunderous spikes? Then I have the show for you, Set Point, where I cover NCAA men's and women's volleyball, high school boys and girls volleyball, beach volleyball, and even professional volleyball. Catch the action every week here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Back with segment number 2 of Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that sports. Definitely check out all of our amazing shows and also check out our website as well as our sponsors. We definitely would appreciate your support. We're trying to continue to grow this thing as much as we can. As we're doing, I take pride in a lot of this whole Set Point thing. I mean, I know it's not much, but all the stuff is free. There's no subscription or anything of that sort, especially when it comes to my content on Instagram, on X, and on TikTok whenever I get back to going to that. So I promise you I'll be posting that. And I promise you I'll probably be posting the highlights from Hawaii UC Irvine from match 1 and match 2. So with that being said, let's get on into the second half of the show. As I also do gotta say, for those that are actually tuning in and you're taking a break from the national championship in terms of NCAA men's basketball, I appreciate you. I really appreciate you from the bottom of my heart. So with that being said, let's talk a little NCAA beach volleyball. As I always say this in the beginning, I always put on X that I'm going to be talking NCAA beach volleyball as well, but unfortunately I don't, as men's volleyball is, I got to show love to NCAA men's volleyball first and foremost. So as for the AVCA poll from the Toity Foist, yes, got to switch up one thing. Yeah, so as if you all remember last week's show, I basically said Stanford's most likely going to be the number 1 team because they took down Texas while Texas took down UCLA. That was the case. So Stanford's the new number 1. UCLA is chilling at 2. Texas jumped up to 3, which I thought was really cool. That's their highest ranking in program history. USC's 4, Florida State's 5. Cal Poly dropped all the way down to 6. TCU 7, LMU 8, Cal 9, Long Beach State 10, so on and so forth. LSU was 11 after their 2 bigs over Arizona State. Oh, God. Talk about lack of attention to detail. Arizona dropped out of the poll from this past week. So, yeah. Arizona State was 12. GCU was 13. Hawaii was 14 as the 2 separated from last week after sharing the 13th spot, and so on and so forth. So as for this week this past week in terms of the NCAA beach volleyball, there was actually quite a bit happening, as the main focal point for the NCAA Division I beach volleyball realm was the Best of the West tournament that happened in Laguna Beach, which would have been the perfect opportunity for me to go to that and to go to my first NCAA beach volleyball event. But sadly, I just unfortunately did not have the time to do so, which really sucks. But hopefully my lazy butt will get to an NCAA beach volleyball duel sooner rather than later, just because season's starting to wind down. Soon conference tournaments are going to be happening. Anyway, so recapping what happened this past week in terms of some of the notable matches, notice the word notable, not anything else of that sort. We had on Friday, Florida State swept Jacksonville, nothing surprising there. LMU swept Southern Miss, nothing surprising there. South Carolina took down Colorado Mesa, nothing surprising there. Florida Gulf Coast pulled off a nice little win over Hawaii. This is unranked Florida Gulf Coast taking down Hawaii, which was a very big win. So remember when Hawaii had that big win over USC to start the NCAA beach volleyball season? Yeah, they haven't really, I would say they haven't been the same ever since, but they just haven't really been that sort of, that team that took down UCLA. But it is what it is. Stetson took down FIU. Nice win right there. Hawaii bounced back with a nice win over Colorado Mesa. Arizona took down South Carolina, which might shake up the state rankings this upcoming week. LMU pulled off a nice little win. The number 8 Lions took down the number 5 Knowles in 3-2. Arizona State took down Ottawa of Arizona. That's not too surprising right there. USC took down Long Beach State in Laguna Beach, which was a very good win right there. I mean, the duel was kind of clinched before Long Beach State was able to get that second win, so it didn't really come down to the wire. A match that did come down to the wire, or a duel that came down to the wire, was UCLA, as it got down to the third and final set between Sally Perez and I forget her. I think it's Maggie Boyd. I'm not entirely sure, but either way, UCLA was able to outlast Cal Poly in a 3-2 thriller. So that was a clutch win right there for the Bruins. Boise State beat Oregon. Something to note for Boise State is that Boise State has won, I think, 25 straight duels at home, which I think is pretty cool right there. So, but that being said, I really want to see what they could do against a big-time opponent. And I think they're going to get a big-time opponent this upcoming week, if I'm not mistaken. And then Arizona took down Florida Gulf Coast. Cal took down San Jose State 4-1. Stanford took down Long Beach State 4-1. GCU took down FIU 4-1. Cal took down UC Davis 4-1. Not surprising there. You also had nothing really too special from there. Washington took down Houston Christian 5-0. Not surprising there. USC outlasted Cal Poly 3-2, which was a very good win on the Trojans' behalf, just because Cal Poly was out to prove itself. Texas took down Tulane, not surprising there, but Tulane then took down Washington 4-1. Nice win right there. And then Texas took down Washington 5-0. So Texas is on a roll. Number 1, Stanford took down number 2, UCLA 3-2 in a classic. Very good win for Stanford. I'll give my thoughts on Stanford in a little bit. But Boise State took down Santa Clara 5-0. Texas swept Houston Christian, not surprising there. Moving it along on Saturday, or continuing the Saturday matches, we had South Carolina taking down Hawaii 3-2. Another good win for South Carolina, but another tough loss for the Bows. FIU took down Ottawa of Arizona in straight sets. Florida State bounced back and took down Southern Miss 5-0. Arizona took down Colorado Mesa 5-0. LMU took down Jacksonville 5-0. Stanford took down USC 5-0. Man, Stanford took USC to the shed. I'm just going to say that right there. Like, that was a very good win by the Cardinal, just because USC is more often than not have gotten the better of Stanford in beach volleyball, but they were able to take them down quite handily. Then South Carolina took down Florida Gulf Coast 4-1. Arizona State took down FIU 5-0. Florida State took down LMU in a nice little revenge match 3-2. Cal took down San Jose State again 4-1. And then continuing on to the other Saturday matches, Hawaii outlasted Arizona 3-2. Boise State completed its weekend at home, taking down Texas El Paso, or UTEP 5-0. Arizona State took down Stetson in a 4-1 win. That's a nice win right there for the Sun Devils, considering they've kind of have gone the wrong direction. GCU took down Ottawa of Arizona 5-0. Stanford outlasted Cal Poly 3-2, which was a nice win right there for the Cardinal. Central Arkansas. Why am I talking about that one? Central Arkansas beat Austin Peay. Yeah, cool. Cal Poly took down Long Beach State 5-0. That was a convincing win right there. That right there might prove the legitimacy of Cal Poly. This might be the year Cal Poly actually wins the Big West Conference tournament, but we shall see. Cal beat UC Davis again, 5-0. This time for real, Boise State took down Cal State Northridge 4-1 to complete its perfect weekend at home. GCU took down Stetson 4-1. UCLA outlasted USC 3-2. UCLA dusted off Long Beach State 5-0. And that was pretty much that. So I actually do want to give my thoughts on Stanford for this past week. Stanford went 4-0, and they took down some legit opponents. They took down USC 5-0. They took down Cal Poly 3-2. They took down UCLA 3-2. They took down Long Beach State 4-1. They went 4-0 in terms of the best of the West. Now, I know they've got the Center of Effort Challenge, which is actually kind of a nice little tournament. They've got 8 teams partaking in it, with 4 teams in each pool, and then it'll be decided after pool play on who gets to face who in terms of like crossovers. So I think for Stanford, this begs the question: is this the year Stanford puts it together? Because here's the thing about Stanford: the past couple of years they've had legit runs. They've had legit teams that I think have definitely had the talent to go deep. But the quarterfinals have kind of been their Achilles heel, and that's something I really feel bad about when it comes to the Stanford team, because this is a Stanford team that once was started from the bottom. That had like 10 wins, and that pretty much was the punching bag for everybody. But now this is a Stanford team that's really been legit, and that's recruited some of the better players that have eventually gone on to play pro in terms of like the AVP and so on and so forth. So overall for the Stanford team, I think the Stanford team is the real deal. And I think they can go places if they play their cards right. But the big thing is will they be able to get past the quarterfinals of the NCAA tournament? That's my big thing right there. So we'll see. And because you still have UCLA that's still up there. You've still got USC. Texas is on a heater. Cal Poly, I think, is still a threat. TCU, even though they've got a younger team than they have in years past, I think this is still a year where they're still a threat. Florida State has been really impressive. And then you've also got LMU, which can sneak up on you. So you cannot take any team for granted. So they'll get you if you're not careful. So that's pretty much my little take right there in terms of NCAA beach volleyball. Really hoping that these next couple weeks I can make it to a duel. If not, I'm going to have to make it to the MPSF tournament, just because I really want to see continue my streak of going to NCAA beach volleyball duels. I went to one last year at TCU. I went to one the year before against Long Beach at Long Beach City College, where Long Beach State hosted. And then also that same year I went to USC UCLA for USC Senior Day. So unintentionally, of course, but still, it was a perfect timing place right there. So yeah, that's pretty much that for the NCAA beach volleyball portion of the show. I know I kind of had to skim through that, but we got quite a bit of volleyball to discuss in terms of the pro stage. So let's move on to the MLV, or Major League Volleyball, or formerly known as the Pro Volleyball Federation. So this past week was kind of an interesting week right here, just because there was quite a bit of some playoff implications, just because the standings were getting pretty tight, if you ask me, and teams could not afford too many losses here and there. So where we left off was on Thursday, where the Omaha Supernovas and Atlanta Vibe took on one another following the MLV All-Star match. So Thursday we had the Supernovas playing at the Atlanta Vibe at the Georgia State Convocation Center, where the Supernovas took down the Vibe in 4 sets. So that was a big win right there for the Supernovas. I had a feeling that could have been a trap game right there, just because the next game for Omaha was the Indy Ignite. But the Omaha, in addition, Omaha was without 3 of its top players. One was Sydney Hilly, the other was Sarah Parsons, and then there was someone else. I don't think it was Merritt Beeson that was also big time. That was Janice Liao. But regardless, Omaha was shorthanded, but they actually played really well. So I was very impressed by the Supernovas, just because the first set I think was probably what really swung the momentum to them, because they were down by as many as 8, but then they rallied back to win that first set 26-24. Then they just stormed the way through set 2, kind of got punched in the mouth in set 3, but then regrouped and took down Atlanta in set 4. So Omaha was led by Emily Londot, who had 22 kills. She is really starting to make a name for herself in terms of the Omaha Supernovas. Brooke Nunaviller had 12 kills with 13 digs. Brooke Mosier had 51 assists and 11 digs. So she really stepped up following the absence of Sydney Hilly, which is big time right there. And then Elena Ogilvie had, I think this was an MLV record, if not an Omaha Supernovas record, 32 digs. 32 digs in a 4-set match. That's just unbelievable. I felt like I was watching a Big Ten matchup. But yeah, Omaha Supernovas just continued to win, and that was a massive win right there for Omaha. So great win right there for Omaha. For Atlanta, they were led by Leah Edmond and Aiko Jones, both having 15 kills. Unfortunately, it was just not enough, as Avery Carlson also had 40 assists and 15 digs as well. Edmond had 16 digs too. But unfortunately for the Vibe, it was not enough, as they could have definitely used that one. But let's be honest, Omaha's starting to play better ball. Then we also had the San Diego Mojo taking down the Columbus Fury in 3 sets at the Columbus Fury. The Fury have only still won 1 home match all season this year. Yikes. As the Mojo were led by Grace Loberg, who had 13 kills. They also got 11 kills from Maya Tabron. For Columbus, they were led by Akasha Anderson, who had 10 kills. Oh, I'm sorry. Raina Terry had 12 kills to lead the way. Then Akasha Anderson had 10 kills. But unfortunately, it was not enough, as the Fury just are having that type of season. They're like I said, they've only won 1 home game this year. And it's just been ugly. It's been a year to forget for Columbus. This is a year where you just flush down the toilet and you never look back. So there you go. I don't have much to say about that. It's tough to really say anything about that, just because Columbus, I'm sorry, it's not real pro volleyball. I mean, San Diego was kind of in that same stage with them, but at least San Diego is starting to put it together. Anyway, so next up, Friday, we had the Dallas Pulse taking on the Grand Rapids Rise, and the Pulse were just on a heater, and they just continued their winning ways as they took down the Rise in 4 sets. They did drop the first set in Grand Rapids, but they took the next 3, which was very clutch on their behalf. All of these sets were tight. There was not one set that was decided by 3 points or less, but I digress. Anyway, so as for the Pulse, they were led by Mimi Collier and Sofia Maldonado Diaz, both having 18 kills. As a team, Dallas hit 250. As for the Rise, they hit 213. They were led by Paige Briggs-Romine, who had 15 kills and 13 digs. Elizabeth Ine had 12 kills, and then Allison Mayfield had 11 kills. But it wasn't enough, as the Pulse just continued their winning ways. And let's be honest with ourselves, the way Dallas had been playing, Grand Rapids would have needed a miracle in order to win. So, yeah. Then we kind of had the match of the week right here, the Indy Ignite playing at the Omaha Supernovas. So it felt like this could have been Omaha's match to win, but sadly, Omaha was still shorthanded. They didn't have Sydney Hilly. And this is where you really miss those players in terms of like Sydney Hilly and then Sarah Parsons. That's another big loss. Janice Liao. So Merritt Beeson did get to play a little, but it wasn't enough, as the Indy Ignite swept the Omaha Supernovas. I wouldn't say convincingly, but it was still rather, they didn't really have too much struggles when it came to this match, as Indy was led by Anna DeBeer, who had 16 kills. Azani Taylor had 13 kills. Lecator member Monet had 10 kills. As a team, this is going to be surprising, and I'm very surprised Omaha allowed this. Indy hit 357 in terms of like the match. In terms of the match, Indy hit 357 while Omaha hit 250. This is something you rarely see when it comes to Omaha. You never really see them giving up a hitting percentage like 350. That's just way too high. And in terms of like their digs, Elena Ogilvy used up most of her digs. She only had 12 digs in this match, but Indy was still one of the better teams. They're still atop the standings, and it's going to get better for Indy as Omaha was led by Brooke Nuneviller, who had 10 kills. Emily Londot kind of came back down to earth. She had only 4 kills. Reagan Cooper actually led the way with 11 kills. My bad. So Reagan Cooper led the way with 11 kills. Brooke Nuneviller had 10 kills. And then Brooke Mosier set the offense again with 32 assists. But unfortunately, the Supernovas kind of got cooled off, which you're about to see that's kind of going to hurt them, but not too much. As for this matchup against the Atlanta Vibe and the Orlando Valkyries, this time Orlando's starting to become a little bit more healthy. They have Brittany Abercrombie back in the lineup, which is great for them just because, man, if there's ever a player that they need, it's her. They needed her back in the lineup. Is the other girl back into the lineup? Hannah Maddox? It does not look like it. She might be on the shelf for the entire year, which sucks, but it is what it is. But having Brittany Abercrombie is big for this team because Orlando is a much better team with her than without her. And the thing about Orlando is that they have depth on the left side. I don't think they have as much depth on the right side. But regardless, Orlando took down Atlanta in 4 as Charity Looper led the way with 22 kills. They also got 16 kills from Brittany Abercrombie. Natalie Foster had 12 kills, which was pretty good. Chompu had 46 assists to go along with 13 digs. Courtney Schwann had 21 digs. As a team, Orlando hit 287 while holding Atlanta to a hitting percentage of 151. Now, Atlanta, they were led by Aiko Jones, who had 20 kills, while Leah Edmond had 12 kills and 15 digs. Ellie McKissock had 19 digs. Well, Britt Rampelberg did not play. Why did I mention that? Anyway, Ellie McKissock had 19 digs, which was pretty good. But the offense, I felt, was just lacking for the Atlanta Vibe. And 2 tough losses for this week. Those matches could have gone either way. But for Atlanta, that's not ideal to lose both of those matches. All right, and then next up on Sunday, we had a doubleheader. We had kind of the toilet bowl matchup. aka the battle of the 2 bottom teams in the league. We had the Columbus Fury hosting the Grand Rapids Rise. So remember how I said that the Columbus Fury has only won 1 home match all season long? They make it 2. The Columbus Fury wound up reverse sweeping the Grand Rapids Rise. You know, this is the reason why I'm not high on the Grand Rapids Rise this year. I am not high on the Grand Rapids Rise. Why? Because you got reverse swept on the road against a team that had 1 home win going into this match. You ought to be ashamed of yourself. Just end your season, please, Grand Rapids. Okay, jokes aside, I got to give it up to Columbus. Columbus really came back perfectly in this matchup. Like, they were down 0-2, and they had every reason to just give up. But instead, they said, we are not losing in front of our home fans. We are literally going to fight back, and we're going to fight like heck. And they did. Heck, Columbus ran their 6-2 offense quite effectively with Audrey Pack and Camille Hiapo both being effective. Anyway, as for the offense, Raina Terry led the way with 25 kills. He also had 10 kills from Reagan Pittman-Nelson. But those are your only double-digit kill leaders. As a team, Columbus hit only 188 while holding Grand Rapids to a hitting percentage of 153. As the Rise were led by Paige Briggs-Romine, who had 17 kills. You also got 11 kills from Allison Mayfield. And you also got 10 kills from Elizabeth Ine. So, yeah, Grand Rapids, this is a bad loss. This is a bad loss by any means. Like, you got reverse swept, number 1. And number 2, you lost to a team that had a whopping 1 win at home all year. Just that's just embarrassing. I'm sorry, but it is the truth. There was also almost another reverse sweep as the San Diego Mojo took on the Dallas Pulse. Believe it or not, San Diego actually went up 2-0 in the match. And I was thinking, what's going on here? I actually had a chance to see this matchup on Easter Sunday. I feel bad for those that had to play on Easter Sunday. But Dallas actually made a nice little furious comeback. They won the next 2 sets after dropping the first 2, but San Diego was able to take that 5th set 15-11 and win a much-needed match, as well as cooling off Dallas. That right there was a massive win right there for San Diego and their playoff hopes. Because like I said, if they were going to make the playoffs, they're going to need to start winning matches that are kind of out of their comfort zone. They can't just play the Columbus Fury every single week. They got to pull off upsets against the likes of the Omaha Supernovas and the Indy Ignite and the Dallas Pulse, which San Diego did. So a great win right there, as Maya Tabron led the way with 17 kills and 20 digs. You also had 10 kills and 13 digs from Grace Loberg. And then you also had 13 kills from Morgan Lewis, and you had 11 kills from Marin Grote. So overall, great offensive output match all night, as you got 60 kills from Marley Monserrat, who also had 13 digs. Meanwhile, for Dallas, Mimi Collier led the way with 24 kills and 14 digs. And then you also had 14 kills from Sofia Maldonado Diaz. Natalia Valentin Anderson had 57 assists, but it wasn't enough. If you're Dallas, you just got to throw this loss away. And it's kind of tough just because you kind of had a grinded out match against Grand Rapids. You had 2 matches on the road. So that was my biggest concern with Dallas this week. Being on the road and probably being jet lagged and having to go from coast to coast. You went from Midwest or Central all the way to the West Coast, all the way back to the DFW. So unfortunately, it was a tough loss for Dallas, but they're still having a great first season, and they're still quite a ways ahead in terms of second place. Now, looking at the standings, let's look at the standings before we preview Week 13. Why is this still here? Week 14 of the League One volleyball season. Regardless, week 13 was this week. So yeah. Looking at the standings for this week, just gotta change a couple things here and there. The Indy Ignite are still in first place at 16-4. Dallas is in second place, 16-6, but they still have a little ways to go. I mean, they still have a little time left. They still have quite a bit of time left, but I wouldn't say time's running out for them. I'm just saying that they need to, not have another loss like that ever again. So anyway, as Mikey Two Guns pops in the chat room, he said, "Hey, Teran, just want to chime in with my support. Keep up the great work, brother." Thank you, Mikey. I appreciate that. I appreciate you popping in and tuning in. So that really meant a lot. But anyway, as for the MLV standings, Indy is still in first place while Dallas is in second. Omaha, okay, this is where it gets interesting. So third place is Omaha at 11-11, but San Diego is kind of on their coattails at 10-10. And meanwhile, the Orlando Valkyries are 10-11. So Orlando's nowhere near out of the race, especially with Brittany Abercrombie back in that lineup. And if the Mojo keep coming up big in their matches that they're supposed to win, this is their chance. Atlanta is in 6th place at 8-12. Sixth place at 8-12. Grand Rapids is in 7th at 7-14. Surprisingly, they still have a pulse in terms of making the playoffs. And then Columbus is 5-15. We got, at this point, I can't even take the pulse, I can't even take the Fury and the Rise seriously. So jump to week 14 of the MLV season. So Thursday is an interesting matchup. So you got the Indy Ignite at the San Diego Mojo. So I'm just going to say this. If Indy is not careful, they could get tripped up. But if Indy plays the way that they're playing, they could win this match fairly easily. So I think the Mojo are still having a fantastic the Indy Ignite are still having a fantastic season. But the thing about the Ignite is they have yet to have that lull where they have fallen. They've just dropped consecutive match after consecutive match after consecutive match. Meanwhile, for San Diego, they're fighting for their playoff lives here. So the thing about San Diego is the pressure is more so on them than the Ignite. I think the Mojo have a lot to lose when it comes to this matchup, whereas the Ignite, even if they lose, they'll still be in a good position to be the number 1 seed. And then Friday, you've got the doubleheader between the Atlanta Vibe and the Columbus Fury. If the Vibe want to have any sort of chance of making the postseason, you got to win this matchup. The Columbus Fury are out to play spoiler, and they're out to throw wrenches in everyone's playoff hopes. And then also on Friday, you've got the Grand Rapids Rise at the Omaha Supernovas. I can't imagine Omaha losing this matchup. If Omaha loses this matchup, I don't know what to say. This is a Grand Rapids team that lost to the Columbus Fury. I can't imagine Omaha losing at home against Grand Rapids. And then Saturday, you've got the Orlando Valkyries at the San Diego Mojo. My only concern for Orlando is this. They got to go all across the country down to San Diego. But that gives them plenty of time because Orlando hasn't played a match since last Saturday. And that could be big in terms of like rest because maybe that gets some of their players back and healthy. So you got to take that into consideration right there. So Orlando could definitely use some time off, but this isn't this is a business trip right here. They got to be strictly business against the San Diego Mojo. And the one who I think could have a big match is Brittany Abercrombie because she's a San Diego native. And also I think for her, she needs to pick up on lost time because she's the reigning MVP and missing out on a massive chunk of the season is just not ideal. And then Sunday, oh God, we got round 2 of the Toilet Bowl matchup between the Columbus Fury and the Grand Rapids Rise. I don't want to talk about this matchup. I really don't. It's really the Toilet Bowl. The 2 worst teams in the league, Columbus and Grand Rapids. I'm sorry, but it's the truth. Columbus and Grand Rapids are both the stinky teams. Anyway, moving on from that, Atlanta at Indy is kind of an interesting matchup. I mean, on paper, it looks like Indy can win this one easy, but Atlanta they have talent. The only way Atlanta doesn't win this is if Indy just torches them. And the only way Indy doesn't win this is if Indy just winds up pooping the bed and just having such an off night. Or they just get jet lag from their trip to San Diego. But I think Indy should win this one. But if there's ever a week for Atlanta to pump their playoff hopes up, this is the week. And they really got to prove themselves right here. So hopefully for their sake, they do have a chance to win this one. But Indy's really good. And Indy's been on a heater. And there's not much stopping this Indy Ignite team. So we shall see. So moving on to the rest of the Sunday's matches, we've got the Dallas Pulse at the Omaha Supernovas to close off Week 14. This is going to be a fun little matchup right here. So this could be an early playoff preview right here. So Dallas needs to get back into the win column. I'm looking at who they play. They don't play anybody. So they don't play until that Sunday. So it's good that they actually get a little bit of rest before they travel to Omaha to take on the Supernovas. Look, Dallas can't afford too many more of these tough losses, but they're playing at Omaha. So my thing is for Omaha, they still need the wins to clinch a spot in the playoffs. They are nowhere near clinched a playoff spot because you got Orlando on your tail, San Diego's on your tail, and you can't count out the Atlanta Vibe. And then the Pulse need this win to keep pace with the Indy Ignite in terms of the number 1 seed. Though having the number 1 seed kind of hasn't really done anybody. There's not been one team in the PVF or MLV that has been the number 1 seed and won the championship. So we'll see when it comes to the Dallas Pulse and the Omaha Supernovas. But there you have it right there. That's that for that little matchup. So now let's jump on into the final week of the 2026 League One volleyball season in terms of the regular season. So in terms of the regular season, it's officially decided on who the 4 playoff teams will be. So we need to start things off on Wednesday where we had LOVB Houston taking on LOVB Nebraska. Nebraska definitely needed the win while Houston basically had the number 1 seed locked up. Nebraska wound up winning this one in 4, and this was a clutch win from Nebraska. Way to give some of your fans one more thing to cheer for, as this was the final regular season week of Jordan Larson. Because after this year, she's calling it a career. So Nebraska picked up a clutch win over Houston, and that was huge right there. So, which you're about to see in a little bit. So, jumping to Thursday, we had LOVB Salt Lake at LOVB Austin. This was basically an elimination match for Austin. If they lose this, they're out. If they win, they still live to fight another day. And they did so as they swept Salt Lake, which was so clutch right there for Austin. And then also on Thursday, LOVB Atlanta outlasted LOVB Madison in 5. And because Atlanta beat Madison, there was not going to be a possibility where Nebraska, Austin, Atlanta, and Salt Lake were to finish 10-10. And that was courtesy of Lincoln Arneal. And I said, darn, I really wanted to see all of those teams go 10-10 and see the chaos. But unfortunately, I can't always get what you want. And Atlanta said, no, we don't want no drama. Anyway, so also on Saturday, you had first and foremost, Saturday was the last day of the regular season. So last day of the regular season was Saturday. You had LOVB Houston taking on LOVB Atlanta. This was kind of the match that was already decided in terms of like seeding. Houston was basically locked in as the number 1 seed, and Atlanta was also locked in at the number 2 seed, unless Nebraska wound up winning. But either way, Houston took down Atlanta in a 5-set barn burn. This could be a preview of the League One Volleyball Championship. And good win by Houston because you get some momentum going into the playoffs. I'm going to explain to you the format in a little bit, but let me just tell you, this playoff format is so funky and weird. All right, but now we got to get into the matches that truly matter the most. So in terms of chronological order, we had LOVB Austin taking on LOVB Nebraska. This was the final regular season match of the playing career of Jordan Larson. So here's the thing about Nebraska and Austin. If Austin wins, their playoff hopes, they make the playoffs, while Nebraska has to wait and see when it comes to Salt Lake and Madison. If Nebraska wins, they're in the playoffs for sure. And there's the possibility of them having the number 2 seed. But in the end, Austin wound up taking down Nebraska in 5, which was so bummer. That was such a bummer because I basically said this on Saturday. It's like Nebraska can't afford to put their playoff hopes in the hands of Madison just because that's the worst team in the league. And if they beat it, and if Nebraska were to see Salt Lake win, they'd be out of the playoffs. So, yeah, losing that 5-setter just left a very sour taste in everyone's mouth. And bear in mind, this is kind of Austin versus Nebraska just because this is a rivalry. This is like Austin versus Nebraska in NCAA women's volleyball. So you obviously have to remember that right there. Both these teams wanted to win. And eventually Austin just had a little bit more oomph in them, a little bit more pride. And this was desperation mode right there. So, yeah, Austin made the playoffs. Well, Austin is in the playoffs. But at the same time, it's like, now it's a matter of who they're going to face instead of if they're going to face. So when it came down to it, the final match was between LOVB Salt Lake and LOVB Madison. In terms of chronological order, I could have gone with Nebraska Austin first just because of reasons, but I decided against it just because, well, dramaticness and whatnot. So in terms of Salt Lake Madison, Salt Lake wound up taking down Madison in 4. Madison wound up winning the first set, but then Salt Lake gentlemen swept them, or ladies swept them, winning the next 3 sets. So unfortunately for LOVB Nebraska, even though LOVB Salt Lake and LOVB Austin tied at 10-10 in the standings, Nebraska was the outside looking in, which was absolute garbage. This is where you really wish you had the old playoff format where everyone made the playoffs. Unfortunately, I guess the league decided to change things up, which kind of sucks just because I think Nebraska was playing some of its best ball, but unfortunately they just could not. They unfortunately wound up losing that tough game. So in terms of the standings, yeah, I guess this was decided on points where no, it wasn't. It wasn't decided on points. Had they decided this on points overall, Nebraska would have been the 3 seed and they would have been in the playoffs. But sadly, they didn't. So one LOV League One volleyball player, Laura Dijkema, I don't know how to pronounce that last name. Laura Dijkema, she wound up voicing her opinion. She says, sad, frustrated, and it doesn't feel finished. By the European point system, where you earn 3 points for winning in a 3 or 4 set and at least 1 point for pushing a match to 5, we would have been 3rd in the regular season. Same would have been with Austin and Salt Lake, a better ratio, 7 wins in our last 10, and still no playoffs because of the 3-way tie system. Look, I get it. I totally get the frustration. And even Avid Volley, who does a darn good job of promoting pro women's volleyball, he said the tiebreaker is so absurd. I don't care. Austin has the tiebreaker against Nebraska and Salt Lake. Nebraska owns the tiebreaker against Salt Lake. But Salt Lake gets into the playoffs over Nebraska because they were better than Austin. I don't even know where to begin. It's like, can't we just have like a little mini playoff where teams play one another in a triangle match, where the 4 and 5 seed face one another in a best 2 out of 3 match, and then the winner takes on the 3 seed for the potential of the 3 seed. I can only imagine what would have happened had Atlanta been 10-10. But yeah, Lincoln Arneal breaks it down perfectly. He says Austin gets the 3 seed with a 5-3 record against the other teams. The other teams in contention. Salt Lake is 4-4 and gets the third seed, and then Nebraska went 3-5 as its season ends. Yeah, this is a little complicated in my opinion. This, I think, is a little complicated in terms of like standings. I really feel bad for Nebraska, especially Jordan Larson, just because this was her last game as a pro, because she is calling it a career. So, man, I mean, I'm no expert when it comes to pro volleyball, but at the same time, it's like there's got to be like a better system. But at the same time, Nebraska shouldn't have had that streak where they just kept losing a bunch of games after a bunch of games after a bunch of games. But every team goes through that ugly streak where they string a bunch of bad losses here and there and just tough losses here and there. But this is the last official pro volleyball match for Jordan Larson, as she's going to continue on with family members, and she's going to continue on with family, and she's probably going to be working with Nebraska in terms of like pro volleyball and maybe it's women's volleyball team. I can't fully confirm that, but it is what it is. But I just got to say, Jordan Larson, it still feels like yesterday when I first met Jordan Larson at the USA Netherlands friendlies. I talked to her. I said, why aren't you playing? And then she was like, oh, I hurt my shoulder. And I remember the USA volleyball rep said, oh, Teran, let's not harass the athletes. I'm still angry at that. It's like, what am I doing? I'm not harassing anybody. I just want to know why Jordan Larson's not playing. And so many people came to my defense, including the volleyball pod with Lincoln Arneal and his other co-host. But I digress. Shelton, I think his name is. But either way, I wish I could have known Jordan Larson more. And I really wish Nebraska, I'm no Nebraska fan, but I respect the heck out of Nebraska volleyball in terms of like its pro and its college volleyball, just because those fans are passionate. And the fact that we're not going to be seeing LOVB Nebraska in the League One volleyball playoffs is just such a bummer, because I would have liked to have seen, hopefully and potentially seen LOVB Nebraska and Jordan Larson one last time. But sadly, that's not the case. And Jordan Larson had herself an illustrious career. She had maybe the most illustrious career in terms of like pro women's volleyball, and it's just not going to, the pro volleyball scene is just not going to be the same as Jordan Larson. She had a lot of accomplishments. She was a VNL champion. She was a NORCECA champion. She was a world champion. She was an Olympic champion. She was the Olympic MVP. She was the best outside from the Olympics. She was an Olympic medalist, 4-time Olympic medalist. She was the 2006 NCAA champion for Nebraska. She was a Big 12 champion back when Nebraska was in the Big 12. Can you believe it or not? She was a league champion in another league, in a pro league outside of the U.S. She was a 3-time Club World champion. She was the 2015 Club World MVP. She was the 2-time Champions League champion. She was a 2015 Champions League MVP. And yeah, she was also 3-time VNL champion and 4-time WEP champion. WBP champion. Either way, a World Grand Prix champion. I'm sorry, I can't read it if that's a G or if that's a B. But either way, yeah, Avid Volley put it best. The greatest of all time. Thank you, Jordan Larson. I wish I could have known you better. I wish I could have seen more of your matches. I'm sad that I never got a chance to really see you in terms of like in person. But this is what happens when I unfortunately don't have the funds and whatnot. So yeah, I'm bummed that LOVB Nebraska season ended just because I wanted to hopefully see LOVB Nebraska get into make the championship, and eventually, I get to see Jordan Larson hopefully end off on a happy ending, but sadly that's not the case. So there you go. So yeah, but thank you, Jordan Larson, for changing the game of volleyball so perfectly, so greatly, so immensely, not just in Nebraska, but all around the world. Whether you faced off against her, whether you admired her, she was dang good at at this volleyball thing. So we'll miss you, Jordan Larson. Best of luck with mommyhood and your next future endeavors. All right, but that's that for that little tribute right there. Now let's go to the playoff preview for League One volleyball. So, all right. So this format's really weird. It's a very, very weird format. So Atlanta and Austin are the 2 and 3 seed. They'll face off against one another. And then Houston's the 1 seed, and then Salt Lake's the 4 seed. So it's not just going to be one and done. So there are actually going to be 2 matches. It's basically going to be it's a 2-match series. So it's going to be like in like the World Cup. It's going to have like a first leg and a second leg. So the first matches will be on Friday, and then the second matches will be on Saturday. Well, one match will be on Saturday, and then the other match will be on Sunday. So both matches will be on Friday. Friday, Austin takes on Atlanta, and then Salt Lake takes on Houston. But here's the thing. If you win the second match, you have to win both matches. If both teams split their matches with one another, then it goes to a golden set tiebreaker, which I think is pretty cool if you ask me. It's kind of like the AVP League, except a little bit more intense. And obviously there's more people. But I think that's for League One having a BS tiebreaker system, I think they have a really, really, really good playoff format. I think this is a fun playoff format whereas if you add every team in it, then it goes down to unpredictability and who plays their best on that weekend. But I think this is a unique format. So Austin, Atlanta. All right. Yeah, I might as well actually just make my predictions on who's going to advance. So Salt Lake had to come up clutch, but they just beat Madison, and Madison wasn't really the best team by any means. I'm going to say Houston advances by all means necessary. I think Houston advances just because Salt Lake has not impressed me as of late. Yeah, they were able to make it to the playoffs, but they kind of got in on a technicality. And that's no disrespect to Salt Lake. I'm just saying they were so fortunate to have made the playoffs, because if that playoff system was not the playoff system that could have been, they would be on the outside looking in. And if they'd lost to Madison or any other match, they would have been out. Like if they also had lost to Nebraska, where they came back and won that 5th set 15-11 after they were down 11-10, they would be on the couch. But I just think LOVB Houston is just going to take it. Will it be in? I think they can take it in 2, and they'll take both matches. I just think that Houston's just better prepared and better equipped in terms of like roster talent, and they just have a lot more momentum going for them. So Anyway, as for the second series, Austin versus Atlanta. All right, Austin is the reigning league champs, but they haven't really been impressive to me. They take on an Atlanta team that's been hungry to bring home a professional league championship to the Peach State. That said, I think this is where we get the golden set. But I have Austin winning this. I think Austin is talented. I just think they kind of hit a little bit of a tough snag where they just lost a bunch of matches in a row at the worst time. And I think they're going to show their true colors and their true potential against Atlanta. That's what I'm thinking. I think Austin, they'll have the hearts of the champions, and we're going to get the Texas two-step. We're going to get Austin versus Houston. And honestly, that's what I think every Texas sports fans want. They want Austin versus Houston, which I think would be pretty ideal if you ask me. But we shall see. What I'm hoping for is I'm hoping to be in attendance in the League One Volleyball Championship as a media member. I still need to get that credential approved by LOVB, so please, League One Volleyball, approve Teran Rodriguez so I can give you all what you want, what you need in my crispy IE Sports Radio polo. Anyway, so that's going to do it for League One Volleyball. I have Houston and Austin advancing. Will I most likely be wrong? And will I be eating crow? Yes, most likely. But we shall see. Anyway, but that'll do it for the League One Volleyball season. So once again, thank you to Jordan Larson for everything. And best of luck with your future endeavors. So I'm not going to go too fast when it comes to this, but 3C2A men's volleyball, San Diego Miramar upset number 2 Golden West last Wednesday in 4. I thought it was an April Fool's joke, but in reality, the Jets were able to take down the Rustlers. So, but Golden West has pretty much clinched a playoff spot. I can't imagine. Because I think top 2 in each division advanced to the top 2 in each division advanced to the playoffs. I know OCC and Santa Barbara clinched their divisions, but the Northern Central Division is really heating up. Between Fullerton, Long Beach City, and Santa Monica, those are 3 teams that still have a chance at the playoffs. And then for the Southern Pacific League, I think it is, or was it Coastal? The one with all the San Diego teams. San Diego Mason, San Diego Miramar are both likely going to be are both most likely going to be making the playoffs. I can't imagine Grossmont snagging that final spot from either one of them, because Miramar and Mesa both play Palomar, and Palomar, they have not won a match this season. So unless Palomar decides to suddenly come out to play, I just think Mesa and Miramar are going to be representing their division. Golden West and OCC will be representing their division, and then it's tough to really determine between Northern Central and the Northern Central Division. I think it's going to be I know Santa Barbara is obviously in there is in the playoffs. I think Moore Park is is also in second place in terms of their division. It's a really confusing division, and honestly, it has like some of the weirdest formats. I mean, I can't even guarantee that this is the correct thing, but yeah, Golden West and Orange Coast are top 2 in their division. Santa Barbara and Moore Park are top 2 in their division, though Pierce is right on their coattails. I wouldn't count out Pierce just yet, but let's be honest, Pierce is going to need to run the table from here on out. Santa Monica, Fullerton, and Long Beach City are all contenders to possibly make the playoffs. But Fullerton is actually tied for Santa Monica for first place, which is intriguing. So I actually want to see who Fullerton plays if the website wants to comply with me. But Fullerton plays Long Beach and Santa Monica. Oh, God. So thankfully they've got both of those teams at home, but Fullerton's going to have to really clutch up this week. And then Long Beach and Santa Monica probably have, I know they've just played one another, but outside of Fullerton, Those two have the last place team. I think it's Antelope Valley. El Camino. I'm sorry, El Camino. So yeah, El Camino, even though El Camino does have a win over Santa Barbara, I just don't see Santa Monica or Long Beach losing to them. So we'll see. All right, but that's that right there for 3C2A men's volleyball. And then lastly, high school boys volleyball. Nothing really happened too big. I mean, Corona Del Mar wound up beating Newport Harbor in Battle of the Bay round 2. Huntington Beach swept Los Alamitos, which I thought was a big statement win right there. Nothing too out of the ordinary when it came to the high school boys volleyball scene. But this week, Huntington Beach and Miracosta faced one another at the Clash of the Titans in Hawaii, which I think is going to be really cool just because it's a rematch of last year's CIF Southern Section Division I final, and it's also a rematch of the SoCal Regional Division I final. So, and also Miracosta has a win over Huntington Beach. So we shall see what happens when it comes to the Mustangs and the Oilers. But that'll do it for the high school boys volleyball scene. It's a pretty sleepy week. I think most teams are on spring break, but we shall see. But that'll do it for high school boys volleyball. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for this week's episode of Set Point. Just wanted to get that out of the way real quick. But for everyone here at IE Sports Radio, this is Teran Rodriguez signing off. Have a great rest of the week. Enjoy all the volleyball action. I'll hopefully be at Santa Barbara, Long Beach on Friday, but I'll for sure be at CSUN UCI on Thursday. So I'll see you all on Thursday at UC Irvine. Have a great week, everybody. Peace.